Just fine. Thank you for your patience.
Gotcha.
All right. So since we're starting just a little bit late, let me go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. And thanks so much for joining us on this call. Before we get started, though, I wanted to give a special thanks to our sponsors for making this call available to us all at no cost today. That's Trent Grand with Grand Title, and Christy Solar at Fairway Independent Mortgage, and Keller Williams Realty, Greater Baton Rouge. And I think my video, here we go. All right. So Dr. Scott, I just wanted to introduce you a little bit, if we can, to let everybody know just a little bit about who you are, and then we'll get started. Is that okay?
Andy.
All right. So today's call is with Dr. Loren Scott. For at least 35 years, Dr. Loren Scott has been providing economic consulting services for a wide range of clients. He is one of 32 members on the National Business Economic Issues Council, which meets quarterly to discuss issues of state, national, and international interest. This group has experts who cover international trade, Washington economic policy, retail trade, trucking, steel, chemicals, etc. He has been appointed to the Economic Advisory Board of the U.S. Council of Competitiveness, a group made up of the CEOs of the Fortune 100, top university presidents, and presidents of 3 major unions. He has been interviewed by MSNBC, CNBC, Bloomberg TV, and several local TV stations, as his work has been cited in such publications as the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, USA Today, the Los Angeles Times, and the Moscow Times, to name a few. Dr. Scott, welcome. Good morning.
Good. Glad to be here. How are y'all?
We are surviving. We're taking one day at a time.
Well, are you ready for me to start?
I am. Let's dive in.
Okay, let's do that. And I want to say, first of all, I have a lot of connection with your particular industry. My mom was a real estate agent, as it turned out, so I spent a lot of time babysitting my little brother and sister while she was out showing houses. So I have some sympathy for that. What I want to do with you this morning is kind of talk about what was happening before all this occurred, because that's really important to talk about what's going to happen after it's all over. Before all this coronavirus stuff came up, the U.S. economy, let's talk about the national economy first, and we'll bring it down to Baton Rouge. The U.S. economy was in its 129th straight month of economic growth. We'd never had a growth period that long in the history of our country. And if you look at the different forecasters, they were forecasting that it was going to keep going through 2020 and through 2021. And they said there were no major imbalances in the economy, like we had, for example, during the real estate problem back in 08 and 09, or the IT problem back in 2001. And so basically everybody was saying everything's going to be great unless there is an exogenous shock, what we economists refer to as an exogenous shock. This is something coming out of nowhere. Well, actually, it turns out we've had 2 exogenous shocks happen all at once, and one was the coronavirus, and the other was the oil price shock that's particularly important to Louisiana. Now, again, prior to these exogenous events, I mean, things were just great, particularly for your industry, I think. Interest rates, very, very low. Banks in great shape, great capital shape, no problem there. And very importantly, the stock market was just going through the ceiling. And the reason that's important is because people buy stuff, especially durable goods like appliances and cars and houses, based not only on their income, but also on their net worth. Well, during this time period, their net worth was going up like a rocket. And so that was making them feeling better about buying durable goods, especially houses. Their personal income was doing very good. The economy was in its 129th month of economic growth. That was doing very well. And as a matter of fact, wages for the first time in some time had started to rise after being very, very flat during the previous administration. Suddenly they were going like this. They were starting to rise again. So everything was really good for the housing industry. And indeed, 2019 was a great year nationally for housing sales. And if you look at the period up through the 20th of February, housing sales in the United States were up 21% this year, year over year. So things are really, really good. Now, in Baton Rouge, things were a little bit different. And the reason for that is because we had very little growth in our area in 2019, primarily because in the second half, we had good growth in the first half of the year. Second half of the year, we started losing jobs. And the primary reason for that is there's been about $16 billion in industrial announcements in our area since 2012. And what was happening up until 2019, we were building about 11 billion of those. And then we finished. And we hadn't quite started up the other 5.2 billion. And so we were in a lull. And so if you look at our growth rate in the second half of the year, we were way off. As a matter of fact, in 2019, construction employment was down 5,000 jobs just in the Baton Rouge area. And the primary reason for that is we were in this lull. Now, we were all set to come out of that, start to grow this year. We have some really big projects in our area. Shintech's got about a $1.5 billion project across the river. Exxon is building about a $500 million one here. Shell has a $1.2 billion one. Methanex has a $1.3 billion one down at Ascension Parish. So everything was set up for this year to be really, really good for the home sales area. Now, last year, again, because it was not a good year on the whole, we were basically flat. Home sales were essentially flat in 2019 in our area. But it was starting to go up. If you look at through about the middle of February, home sales in the Baton Rouge area, East Baton Rouge Parish, were up about 8.2%. So we're starting to see things start to come back. Now, I think it's important for us to understand that the fundamentals in the economy were good before these two shocks occurred. Then the two shocks occurred, especially the coronavirus for our purposes. And starting in about the second week in March, we had the shelter in place, we had the social distancing thing that was put on us. And one of the first things that happened is the stock market went through the floor. It went right through the floor. And again, as I mentioned before, people make purchases of durable goods based on their income and their wealth, where their wealth just took a hit. And so what they did was they grabbed that billfold and they hung on to it. They started hanging on to it. And that is a problem. There's also behind all this, of course, what we're all really concerned about, and that's how long is this sucker going to last? So there's uncertainty about how long it's going to last. And uncertainty is the bane of any industry that sells durable goods. And when people are uncertain, again, they grab that billfold and they hang on to it. To give you an idea, nationally, they're expecting housing sales after having a very good period up through February. They're expecting double-digit declines in housing sales in March and in April. And one of the indicators of this is the mortgage applications. In March, mortgage applications were down 29%. Well, and that's a good leading indicator of what we can expect there. In terms of forecast, again, I'm going to focus here on the national economy for now. The forecast for the national economy, if you want some free forecast of the national economy, plus analysis of the housing industry and all kinds of analysis, go to the Wells Fargo Bank has a great economics department. www.wellsfargo.com. Just sign up for their economic reports. It comes out almost daily. Great analysis, great department. What they are forecasting is that in the second quarter of this year, real gross domestic product will fall a whopping 14.7%. Now, to give you an idea, we've been collecting quarterly data on real gross domestic product, which is the basic measure of how the economy is doing. The Bureau of Economic Analysis has been collecting that data for 73 years. We have never had a decline of this big in that 73-year history. They're also thinking that the third quarter will be minus 6.3%, another very large drop. Coming back in the fourth quarter, I think it'll all be over in the fourth quarter. On the net for the year, the national economy down about 5%. Again, that's the largest one-year drop in real gross domestic product since World War II. So this is a bad one. Now, for Louisiana, I have done some back of the envelope estimates of what's going to happen to employment in the next during the second half of March and the first and into April. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, they released the unemployment insurance claims, which had gone from 1,500 to 72,000 in Louisiana. My back of the envelope estimate indicates that there are about 266,000 people in Louisiana right now that are hourly workers that aren't getting a check, that are going to be, who are now out of work and not receiving a check. So you're getting ready to see that number, that 72,000 number, really rocket up as we get into this time period. Now, so it's right now it's uglier than a train wreck, and the problem is we don't know how long it's going to last. And we're all very hopeful. I don't know. I was just like everybody else. I got up this morning, went out and got the paper, hoping there'll be a headline that says we've reached the top, and it's not happening yet. So we're hoping that that is going to occur. Now, once this is over, though, and again, Wells Fargo is saying that the worst will be over by late summer. Once this is over, though, I think the foundation is still there for a really good real estate market. Matter of fact, Wells Fargo thinks that housing is going to lead the recovery out of this. The millennials are reaching the late 30s, starting to look for a house. And so that's a really good sign. Interest rates are still going to be very low. The Fed is going to keep interest rates very low. That's going to be good. Hopefully, and this is really important, hopefully the stock market will start to come back. If the stock market pops back, and again, some of you may remember what happened in the fourth quarter of 18. In the fourth quarter of 18, the stock market dropped 15%. By February of 19, it had recovered all those losses because, again, the underlying condition of the economy was really good. The fundamentals are there. So, again, that is going to be very important for your industry to watch the stock market and see what it does. Because, again, people base their decisions not only on their income, but on their net worth. Now, the good news for those of you who operate here in Baton Rouge, we're not in the oil patch. Because if you're at home or Lafayette, it is really going to be tough there with these low oil prices. Price of oil today, $22 a barrel. It was just January, it was in the low 60s. And so home at Lafayette are going to get nailed by this, in addition to coronavirus. But this can go away with one phone call. Okay, the president, I think, matter of fact, there's a lot of negotiation going on between the Trump administration and the Saudis to try to get them to quit pumping so much oil on the market. They can turn around that oil price in a heartbeat. We are not in the oil patch. Unfortunately, we're in the government patch. We're in the state government patch. And for every dollar drop in the price of oil, the state loses about $12 million. So we're talking about 300 to 400 million bucks that they're looking at right now. That's going to be a problem for our area. And so we'll see how they take care of that situation. Again, the good news is we're in the government patch, and whether you think this is fair or not fair, government workers still get paid during this time, even though they're at home, even though they're not working at the office, they're still going to get a paycheck. That's not the case if you work in the movie industry, or that you work for casinos, you work for restaurants, anything that's hourly basis, those folks are just getting nailed. So I think the good news is, if we're looking for any good news out there, the basic fundamentals of the economy are good. If we can just get through this sucker and get it solved quickly, then I think your industry is going to be in much better shape. So that's my quick spiel.
That's some great insight for sure, and I do see some glimmers of hope in there for sure. And you and I had traded some emails ahead of this where we kind of talked about the fourth quarter of 2020 being the quarter to watch for a lot more good things to start to reveal themselves. Right.
And I think if we can solve this problem relatively quickly, if this can be, if it really can be done by Easter, wouldn't that be wonderful? If this could be if this could be solved by Easter, and we don't have to do the social distancing anymore. I think most people will be out there still practicing it for the most part, but and you start seeing companies open back up. I think they will open back up relatively quickly, and hopefully we'll get back on the right trail again.
Agreed. You know, Dr. Scott, we do, my company does a lot with builders and new construction real estate sales. Can you talk a little bit about what you think the banks are going to do for the smaller mom and pop builders, you know, the ones that are running $5-10 million lines of credit with their construction loans? Do we think that that's going to tighten up, dry up, ratchet down? What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think it's going to ratchet down. I think the Fed is going to do everything they can to keep this thing going. They are already relaxing some FDIC rules for banks. Again, banks fundamentally good shape. They're in very good shape right now, and so and as it turns out, the home construction industry is considered essential. They can actually, of course, build a home and still practice the CDC rules on social distancing and that sort of thing. So I think you're going to have your inventory of new homes to sell once we get on the other side of this thing. And I think the Fed is going to do everything it can to be very accommodative in this.
I hope that you're right. So a question that I have with the news announcements of the federal aid packages that are being released for small businesses who, as I understand it, and you know, like all of us, the information is coming out and changing by the minute. But if it does come out so that our small businesses that have laid off the hourly workers are able to tap into some federal aid that would sustain the payroll, is that, obviously that seems like a good thing to me. Is that a good enough thing to sort of shore up some of the shortfalls and help keeping the local economy moving forward?
Well, I think it'll shore it up for sure. It's better than, again, because just in Louisiana alone, again, suppose my estimates are anywhere near the mark of 266,000 people who are not receiving a paycheck. Okay, that's a lot of personal income that's not occurring right now. That's a lot of money that's not going into the economy. To the extent that the small businesses are helped through this rule, to the extent that people are receiving that $2,400 check from the federal government, that's going to help shore up this. I think one of the things we have to be moderately concerned about is that for some people, the money they get from the federal government through all this may be enough, maybe more than offset what they were making when they worked. There's not going to be very many, but there can be some people like that. And so I think we economists are always worried about incentives. And so I think one of the incentive issues we have to worry about is the disincentive to work. So I think the government has to balance that out somehow. But you would definitely, what they're suggesting doing is going to be a whole lot better than doing nothing. And it's certainly going to help this thing not last as long as it otherwise would. Again, the Fed is relaxing FDIC rules. They're working with banks to try to stretch this out so that company, unfortunately for restaurants and movie theaters and things, their revenue has stopped. Their debt has not stopped.
Right.
And they're still supposed to make that debt payment, but they're working on debt forgiveness, debt extension, a number of things designed to keep these folks afloat, because again, it's too big a number to just ignore and say, we'll just let the market take care of it. It's too big a number for that.
Agreed. So just going back to some new construction work, one of the questions that we had from somebody that's watching is to talk a bit about the commercial construction side of things too. Do you see that being any different than the residential construction side?
Well, I think it's going to be a little bit different because the commercial side is a little scarier. I think the commercial side tends to get hit more by uncertainty than the housing side does. And so I think you could probably see that pull back a little bit more than the housing side. But again, remember that the fundamental underlying character of the economy is solid. And so I think that's I think, again, if we can just make this thing can just be short term, that's what we all are hoping for. It can just be short term. And if we can get through to maybe June, then I think everybody's going to treat this like a short term exogenous shock, not something that has hit the economy is going to be there forever. Okay, that's why I spent so much time on the earlier part about where the economy was before this happened. Because if we were weak before that, then we're going to have a problem. But we're not. We're strong before that, so we ought to come out of it strong, I think.
So last question, really relative to new construction, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but for the builders and the people that are out there building new homes, you think that it's more safe than not to continue starting new houses and creating the inventory? I mean, in my mind, it takes us about 5 to 6 months to create a house, right? So if we're looking at fourth quarter coming out of this and needing to have inventory, we just continue business as usual?
Well, if I was in that business, of course, I would be dealing with my bank. My
Right.
lender, they have to work this out with the lender. The two of them are going to have to kind of figure this out. To what extent are we willing to take risk? Because this is so uncertain, and uncertainty is the bane of making these kinds of investments. My guess is there'll be some pulling back on both parties because the bank's going to be a little bit reluctant, and then the person that's building the house is going to be a little bit reluctant because they don't know how long this sucker's going to last. The combination of those two things, I think, is going to cause them to slow down a bit.
And that is a point that I wanted to ask. When we talk about, or when you talk about this thing lasting, can you give me some direct indicators of what you're talking about? So are you talking about the social distancing, like the government lifting the order for us to get back to work? Is that one component of what needs to be undone along with the price of oil for our local Baton Rouge economy? Those are the two levers, if you will, that we need to be looking at to if we were going to pick a date, those are the two things we're looking at finding a date to correlate with.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm thinking about is when is the coronavirus threat going to be such that those 266,000 people can get right back to work?
Got it.
And so I'm hoping that will be hopefully sometime in late June. The most hopeful situation is sometime in June. Everybody will be back to work. We'll have to see about that, but you have to understand that that's a swag. That's a scientific wild ass guess right now. But that's just a shot. But I mean, McKinsey, there's the outfits like McKinsey who've set up 3 different scenarios. One, it'll be over in June. One will be over in August. Another, it'll take the whole year. If it's a whole year, then our whole conversation here is almost mute. I haven't made it nearly bad enough. Okay. But my great hope is it'll be over by June. We'll be back to work. Now on the oil thing, can be the drop in oil prices took place in 2 steps. The first step occurred because of the coronavirus. China is the largest consumer of oil in the world, and the coronavirus brought down the demand for oil dramatically. After the demand for oil had been going just like this over time worldwide, suddenly it went down. And anytime you have a drop in demand, the price goes down. So you had the price go from about 60 down to 45. And then you had a meeting, I think it was on March the 6th, between the Saudis and the Russians, what we call the OPEC plus. We still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, where we had the OPEC plus meeting. And they were talking about taking even more oil off the market and propping the price back up to 60s. But the Russians would not agree with that. And so the Saudis said, well, you don't agree with this. Let me show you what's going to happen. So the next day they said, we're going to increase our oil production by 2.5 million barrels per day. And when they did that, the supply of oil increased dramatically. The demand was dropping because of coronavirus. Guess what happens to the price of oil? The price of oil dropped down in the 20s. Now, I don't think, and this again is my very best guess, it's swag, but it's my very best guess. I don't think this is going to last very long. the primary reason I don't think it's going to last very long is because, as they say in the principles of economics class, the demand curve for oil is very steep. It's very inelastic. And practically what that means is when the price of oil drops from 60 to 22, the treasuries in Russia and Saudi start dropping like a rock. I mean, this costs them a lot of money. You can't make it up by producing more oil. You know the old story about the two guys, Boudreaux and Gautreaux, who went to Livingston Parish and bought watermelons for $2 and brought them to Baton Rouge and sold them for 50 cents a piece. And at the end of the day, Boudreaux looks at Gautreaux and said, look, if we're going to make any money at this, we're going to have to buy a bigger truck. Well, it ain't going to work. It's not going to work that way. Okay? In this case, they are losing money, and they're losing a lot of money. That's going to incentivize them to get back to the table, solve their problem, take oil off the market, and get the price of oil back up. It's a very strong incentive for them. So I don't think this is going to last very long. Plus, the Trump administration is already opening up dialogues with the Saudis saying, you know, you got to do something here. You got to take that oil off the market. Let's get back to the table and get this problem fixed. So I'm very hopeful that will be a short-term, really short-term problem. Maybe by the end of April, problem solved. Now, again, there are a lot of people out there. Dr. Dismukes, who's a very smart guy at the Center for Energy Studies at LSU, thinks it's going to last all year long. But we'll just see. We'll just have to see. It's again, you're trying to decide. You're trying to figure out what a government's going to do.
Sure.
Okay. This is not like the market's running this. This is the government running.
Sure. So, Dr. Scott, coming back to the real estate, just some of the indicators and trends that we like to look at on any given day to help us understand supply, demand, absorption rate, month supply of inventory, things like that. With the effects of the price of oil and the coronavirus and sort of the slowdown, if you will, of, you even said it, the loan and mortgage applications. When we look at supply demand of local inventory, what do we think is going to happen with pricing? You know, nationally, we've been hearing a lot of language that we're in a shift and that the shift is here and that we're on the downward side of pricing for houses and things of that nature. But when we look locally in the Baton Rouge market, knowing what's happening now and we project out to the fourth quarter of 2020 and 2021, do we think that prices and home values are going to take a dip, stay relatively the same, or something different?
My guess is during this interim period till this problem gets solved, you're going to see a dip. I mean, because again, a lot of people, because of what's happened to the stock market, what's happened to their own income, these 266,000 people are having none for right now until the government checks come through. You're going to have a drop in demand. It's just that it's the nature of the animal that when you're selling a durable good, and when you have a drop in demand on this order of magnitude, when you're not changing supply, as a matter of fact, you may be adding a bit to supply from the new homes being built. I think my guess would be that the price has got to go down. Now it'll go down until all this starts to work itself out. Again, remember what the fundamentals are like. The fundamentals are still good.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this interim, there'll be serious downward pressure on the price of things. But then once you get back into, say, the fourth quarter, when the dust is settled, I think you'll start seeing the prices resume their upward growth.
It's really interesting just to see the hypersensitivity of the market shift in the real estate values, you know, and I've been doing this for 20 years and I've just always envisioned a shift lasting much longer than a few months. You know, in my mind, it would last years, but this is encouraging news to me, at least, to think that we might.
Because your age, probably the main period you remember is the 08-09, right?
That's right.
08-09 was 08-09. It was a long, and we call it the Great Recession. It was a long period of time and a very deep drop during that time period. That's what you remember.
Right.
But this has the potential to be a relatively short time period, a relatively short drop. Now, the mother of all drops, I mean, this is the mother of all drops in real gross domestic product. But again, it's not because of something fundamentally wrong in the economy. It's because of this weird thing, this exogenous shock that's come along out of nowhere.
Yep.
Oh, short run.
So I've got another question here from Ms. Pat Wadham. What assistance will there be for mom and pop type landlords and those of us who own beach condos for rent that have mortgages? Everyone is canceling the vacation rentals, and if the workers, I guess she means, can't afford to pay their rent in Baton Rouge, where is this help going to come from?
Yeah.
You have any insight on that?
I don't know because I haven't, number one, I haven't seen the bill. I don't think the bill has come out of Congress yet.
Yeah.
I think they are, uh, I think Congress is keenly aware of this issue, the whole real estate issue. And I'm assuming they're going to have something built in, maybe a debt forgiveness or some sort of small business loans to folks in this condition. But honestly, I'm not sure because I have not seen the final bill yet.
And I did see where Congressman Garrett Graves is going to have a webcast next Thursday, I think April 2nd, to explain the aid package and its effects on small businesses. So I know Baton Rouge Business Report published that. I think they're hosting it maybe. So if you want to log into their website and register for that webinar, we probably can find some good information there. Another question that we have, there's a lot of folks, and having been in the childcare industry, Dr. Scott, for a long time, and its effects on the economy as well. The schools are closed, but the governor never actually mandated childcare centers to close. So there's still childcare centers that are in operation, providing care for essential employees and things like that. But obviously, with the loss of jobs, people aren't going to need childcare. So that industry is a very vulnerable industry as well. I guess I'm sort of answering my own question. If we look for the lift to be done by sometime in June with everybody going back to work, childcare workers and employers may be looking really into June or July before their business rebounds. Is that your thoughts too?
Yeah, that would be my guess too. I think it's yeah. As a matter of fact, in our 266,000 estimated job loss, one of the groups that you have in there is that particular group. And now, so I think it's going to be tough. And so hopefully, again, there'll be something in this bill that comes out of Congress that will enable these folks to get through this time period, especially if it's short. And your great hope is there's going to be some sort of small business loans that are forgivable.
Right.
Now, it's forgivable, but taxpayers somewhere down the line are still going to have to pay for it. But
Sure.
in the short run, during this really hard time, it'll be forgivable, hopefully.
All great information. Hey, look, there's a question and answer box on your screen. So if you have a question that you want Dr. Scott to answer, just put it in the box and we'll make sure that we get to it. We've got some time. Let's see. Somebody said, why is the mortgage industry for houses taking such a big hit when the feds have dropped their rates?
Well, because of, again, you're selling a durable good. As a matter of fact, the most durable of all durable goods. Whenever you see a recession come on, the industry that gets hit the hardest are durable goods, as I said before. You talk about cars, appliances, aircraft, but particularly houses. And the reason for that is because people can postpone their purchases of durable goods. They can't I've got to have electricity. I've got to have food. Those are non-durable goods. But I don't have to have a new car, especially if things are bad. I don't have to have a new car, and I certainly don't have to have a new house. And so the primary reason you're getting hit so much harder is because not only are people's incomes dropping, but their wealth is dropping. And then the third thing, they're uncertain about how dadgum long it's going to last. So the combination of those three things is going to nail an industry that is a durable goods industry. By the way, just as a side note, that's why when you look, we were talking earlier about the 08-09 recession. If you look at the 08-09 recession, Louisiana barely got hit by it. Our employment went down just a little bit. But if you look at Alabama, if you look at Mississippi, they took a hit. It took them a long time to get over that recession. And the primary reason for that is they have way more durable goods manufacturing than we do. They have a major car I think Mississippi has 2 major car plants. Alabama has 3 or 4, plus a lot of car manufacturing facilities. When the economy crashes, Louisiana crashes. Alabama crashes. Okay. Now that's when the national economy recovers, Alabama and Mississippi recover, we kind of recover. Okay. So it's just the nature of the dadgum durable goods industry that you operate in. When I was a kid, there was an old limerick, when she was good, she was really, really good. When she was bad, she was horrid. And that's kind of what it's like in the industry that you're in.
For sure. So we have another question, and we've kind of talked about it, but just for the sake of any other commentary around it, specifically as real estate agents, right? There's 3,600 real estate agents in the Greater Baton Rouge Board of Realtors who are being asked questions every day. Should I list my home? Should I buy a home? Is now the time, or do we wait? And along those same lines, what can we do as realtors to assist our customers and really advocate for them? Do you have anything else that you want to say about that?
I think if they want to sell, if your clients want to sell in this environment, my guess is there's going to be a lot of downward pressure on price. So to the extent that they can wait a little bit. Now I know that March and April are supposed to be pretty good selling months for you folks because of what's going on with the school year, et cetera. But aside from what we've already talked about, the only thing I would wonder about is if they're really being pressed to sell right now, my guess is they're going to have to do some price concessions in order to do that.
And, that's kind of the tricky thing. I was talking with another realtor. I mean, we've written, I was talking with one yesterday. She was negotiating 6 contracts in one day. We've written 6 contracts in the last week. It's weird because of the timing of people's lives that maybe aren't interrupted. They haven't lost their job. And it's the right time for them. It's them taking advantage of being able to, buy a home right now with the low interest rates and things like that. So it's difficult for me, at least, to really balance the negative effects of the virus and the price of oil and the economy and the people that are without a job, but also the positives that come with that, specifically in the real estate industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just remember that there are industries that do well during this time period. I mean, anybody in the healthcare industry, of course, they're killing themselves working so hard right now, but there's a lot of money being made there. And the grocery industry, the toilet paper industry is doing great, right now. Fortunately, we have a toilet paper plant just north of town. That's really nice to have that so close by. But there are certain industries that are doing okay. But again, on the net, I just think the environment is going to be a low price to a declining price environment until this is over with.
And I would imagine that also is going to happen in niches, right? In certain price points. Not all price points are going to take that hit. And again, we have to consider the amount of inventory, right? There was already a shortage of houses in certain price points. I would imagine that may not take such a deep hit as price points that, have an excess of supply or inventory. Exactly. So another question that came in, you had mentioned that there were 3 lines of thought that this would be lifted over and done with in June. There's somebody else that, or another forecaster that's saying August, and another one that says the end of the year. Can you speak a little bit about the reasoning behind those lines of thought? What makes us think that it will be June versus the guys that think it's August versus those that think it would be the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, again, this did not come from 3 different groups. This actually came from McKinsey, and most of you know McKinsey is a very famous and well-known and very reputable forecasting and consulting firm. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. And they basically created these 3 different scenarios. One is the hopeful scenario, one is the base case, and then the other one is the not so good case. And it all depends upon how quickly. It all depends on really, I guess, on a couple of things. Number one, how quickly this thing can be brought to its knees. When are we going to start picking up the newspaper and saying, "Hey, we peaked. The numbers are not increasing at an exponential rate anymore. They're starting to smooth out. We dropped the hill down." So it depends upon that. It also depends upon how quickly firms can get back, hire people back, get them going again, and that to no small extent depends upon how quickly the quality of and the speed of which the federal support money comes out. Is this thing going to get passed for the House today? How quickly is the money going to get in people's hands? But the main thing is how quickly can the coronavirus be brought under control so that we can get away from the social distancing and the shelter in place. So it all depends on what your best guess is about those things.
And that makes sense. And just in my own mind, going back to making sure that we're having conversations, especially from the builders and such that we represent. What are their banks going to do? And having those conversations with not only our banks but also our sellers to figure out what's the long-term game plan. So. My last question for you is there anything that we should be asking, anything that we haven't discussed as a real estate agent? We wake up every day and we're getting our finger on the pulse of what's happening. We're looking at new listings that are coming on the market every day. How many are going pending? So is the inventory growing? We've got calls from our clients. So as we wait this thing out, right, as we just see what's going to happen with the virus, and the things that we talked about, is there any other thing that we ought to, as a professional organization, ask ourselves on any given day to sort of direct our action and what we're doing in our jobs right now?
Well, I think the main thing is to do one thing is what we're doing now. Instead of meeting in a room and talking about this, we're doing what immunologists tell us we need to do. So this is one of the tricky things about this for an economist is I'm not an immunologist too, so I can only kind of roughly guess and read what immunologists are saying about how long this thing is going to last. But I would strongly participate in the social distancing and shelter in place to the extent that you can, and be religious about that. Be very good about that, and then I just keep watching that newspaper for that good day when we look at the headlines and they say it's peaked.
I like it.
Over.
I like it. Well, I don't see any other questions that have come in. This has been extremely helpful for me. I hope it's been helpful for everybody else that's signed in. And if we don't have anything else to say, guys, we can wrap it up. Thank you again, Dr. Scott, for agreeing to meet with us and provide a sound voice of reasoning. It's for me, it's a breath of fresh air because our emails and our Facebooks and our news outlets are so filled with so much information. It's hard to really deduce it down to, okay, what's it going to, how's it going to affect the Baton Rouge real estate market? And I think that you've helped us a lot in that space. So thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. Again, thanks to our sponsors, Trent Grand with Grand Title, Christy Solar with Fairway Independent Mortgage, and Keller Williams Realty Greater Baton Rouge. Y'all have a great day. Thank you.